I didn't know his name at first. I just knew the sound of my own heartbeat changing when I felt watched. It started small. It always does. The kind of small you brush off because you don't want to be that girl. The paranoid one. The dramatic one. The one who thinks the world revolves around her. I was 23, living alone for the first time in a narrow apartment wedged between a bakery and a closed-down laundromat. I had routines. Same bus. Same coffee. Same walk home with my headphones in, pretending the city noise was music instead of teeth grinding against my nerves. Then one night, I caught my reflection in a shop window and behind it, him. Not close. Not obvious. Just there. Same jacket I'd noticed 2 days earlier. Same slow pace. Same pause when I paused. When I crossed the street, he didn't follow immediately. He waited. Like a patient animal. I told myself it was coincidence. The next day, he was on my bus. I started keeping a mental log. Tuesday, saw him outside my building. Wednesday, near my office. Friday, standing across the street from my favorite bar, phone in hand, not typing. Just watching. That's when the fear turned physical. Cold fingers inside my ribs. A nausea that didn't go away. I stopped posting online. Changed my routes. Stopped staying out late. Didn't matter. He adapted faster than I did. The first message arrived at 2:14 a.m. You looked tired today. You should sleep more. No name. No number I recognized. Just that sentence, sitting on my screen like a handprint on glass. I blocked it. The next night. Blocking me won't make me disappear. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I froze. After that, things escalated the way avalanches do, quiet at first, then unstoppable. He started emailing my work address. Describing what I wore. Who I talked to. What time I left. Then came the threats. Your sister walks home alone sometimes, right? That one broke something in me. I went to the police. They shrugged in professional sympathy. No direct harm yet. No proof. Unknown sender. Be careful, they said, like I wasn't already living with my keys between my fingers and my phone glued to my palm. He knew I'd gone to them. That night, he left a note taped to my door. Not slid under. Not hidden. Taped. Centered. Neat handwriting. I don't like when you tell other people our business. I stopped sleeping. My world shrank to survival mode. I jumped at footsteps. I stopped trusting strangers. I started flinching when my phone buzzed. And the worst part? He enjoyed it. I could tell by the messages. By the way they got more poetic, more cruel. Like he was sculpting my fear into something he could admire. You're prettier when you're scared. That's when I stopped being just afraid. That's when I got angry. Because somewhere between the panic attacks and the sleepless nights, I realized something important. He wasn't a ghost. He wasn't omnipotent. He was a man. And men make mistakes. I just had to wait long enough for him to make one. I stopped thinking of him as a monster. That was the first real shift. Monsters are unknowable. Untouchable. They live in the dark and you pray they don't notice you. But men like him? They leave fingerprints everywhere. Once the panic dulled, just a little, I started paying attention again. Not as prey, as a witness. I reread every message. Slowly. Line by line. Not for fear anymore, but for patterns. He always knew when I left work within a 5-minute window. He knew my sister's schedule, but only vaguely, sometimes, usually. He knew my favorite bar, but not the bartender's name. Meaning, he wasn't inside my inner circle. Good. I started answering him. Carefully. Not submissive. Not hostile. Curious. Why are you doing this? The reply came instantly. Like he'd been waiting with his finger hovering over the screen. Because you're special. Because no one else really sees you. There it was. The rot. The entitlement wrapped in romance. I played along. Just enough. I told him I was scared. I told him I felt alone. I told him things that were true, but not the whole truth. And he bloomed. People like him always do when they think they're winning. He sent longer messages. Voice notes. Late-night confessions about how hard his life had been. How women always misunderstood him. How he was different. I listened. I saved everything. Then I started testing boundaries. I mentioned fake arguments with coworkers. He asked for names. I gave him decoys. He never corrected me. I complained about my building's security camera being broken. 2 days later, he messaged. They fixed it. That one almost made me throw up. But it also told me something crucial. He wasn't everywhere. He was close. So I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I went back to the cafe near my apartment. Sat by the window. No headphones. Just watched reflections like I used to. It took 20 minutes. A man across the street lifted his phone when I laughed at something on my screen. Not taking a photo, pretending to text. Same jacket. Same posture. This time, I didn't look away. I stared. He froze. That was mistake number one. People who stalk don't expect to be seen, not really. They expect fear. Tears. Avoidance. Not recognition. He looked older up close. Thinner. The kind of man who shrank when confronted but fed on distance. On imagination. I smiled at him. Just a little. And for the first time since this started, he looked uncomfortable. That night, his messages changed. Less confident. Shorter. Why were you staring at me today? I didn't reply. Because I'd already learned what I needed. He lived nearby. He had a routine. He needed control more than he needed anonymity. And most importantly, he thought I was still afraid. He had no idea that while he'd been watching me fall apart, I'd been building a map of his life. Once you see someone clearly, you can't unsee them. His illusion cracked the moment he asked why I'd stared. Because that meant something vital. I'd stepped out of the role he wrote for me. So, I rewrote the script. I stopped replying for 3 days. Not cold silence, strategic silence. The kind that eats at insecure minds. The kind that makes someone refresh their inbox like a rat pressing a lever. On the 4th night, my phone lit up like a confession booth. Are you okay? You're not answering. Did I do something wrong? Please don't shut me out. Please. I answered once. I just needed space. Nothing more. That one sentence did exactly what I wanted. It flipped the power dynamic just enough to make him lean forward. He apologized. Over and over. Promised he'd never hurt me. Swore he was just misunderstood. Said he'd die if anything happened to me. Men like him don't hear themselves. They think devotion excuses everything. I asked him his name. He hesitated. Then gave me a first name. A common one. Too common. But it was a start. I started matching details. The cafe. The timing. The way he lingered near the pharmacy on Thursdays. I took long walks at odd hours, not to escape, but to observe. He always kept about 30 meters away. Always wore the same boots. And always flinched when someone else got too close to me. Territorial. That's when I saw him go inside a building 2 blocks from mine. Old concrete. Cheap mailboxes. A place you don't choose unless you have no one waiting at home. I waited 20 minutes. Then followed. Not inside. I didn't need to. I read the names on the buzzers. 3 floors. 6 names per floor. That night, I cross-checked social media like a forensic tech. Same jacket. Same boots. Same dead-eyed half-smile in a 10-year-old profile picture. There he was. Real name. Real job. Real, painfully small life. He worked night shifts doing inventory for a logistics company. No close family nearby. No friends tagged in years. A trail of bitter comments on women's posts, always framed as jokes. And then I found something delicious. A restraining order. Expired. From another woman. Different city. Same story in the court notes. Persistent, unwanted contact, escalation, threats. He hadn't learned. He'd just moved on. I slept better that night than I had in months. Because now I knew something he didn't. He was replaceable. Predictable. Fragile. I started planting things. A fake complaint email sent to his company's general inbox, mentioning a man matching his description following women near their building. Not accusing. Just concerned. A casual mention in conversation with him about how my friend worked in cybersecurity and could find anyone. He panicked. Tried to play it cool. Failed. You don't need other people involved, he said. I can protect you. That was the moment I stopped pretending. Because protection was never what he wanted. He wanted ownership. And I was done being his possession. So I did something reckless. Something dangerous. I suggested we meet. Public place. Middle of the day. There was a long pause before his reply. Then, I've been waiting for this. So had I. I picked the place. That was important. A busy cafe with glass walls and cheap chairs bolted to the floor. Too public for violence. Too exposed for courage. The kind of place where a man like him couldn't pretend to be powerful without an audience he couldn't control. I arrived early. Sat where I could see the door and my reflection. My hands were steady. That scared me more than the fear ever did. When he walked in, I recognized him instantly, not because I'd memorized his face, but because he scanned the room like a thief casing exits. He hesitated when he saw me. Good. He was shorter than I expected. Shoulders slightly hunched. The jacket looked cheaper up close, the confidence stitched together with hope and illusion. He smiled like we were on a date. Hi, he said. My name tasted wrong in his mouth. I didn't stand. Didn't smile back. Sit, I said. Another mistake. He did. Up close, I could see the cracks. The twitch in his jaw. The way his eyes kept darting to my hands, my phone, the people around us. I let the silence stretch. Finally, he spoke. You're even prettier in person. I leaned forward just enough for him to think it meant something. You ruined my life, I said quietly. His face flickered confusion, then offense. I never hurt you, he said quickly. I was just watching out for you. There it was again. That justification. That sick rewriting of reality. I pulled out my phone. Didn't show him the screen. Just let him see it in my hand. You threatened my sister, I said. You left a note on my door. You followed me for months. I was worried, he snapped, louder than he meant to. People turned. Just a few. Enough. He noticed. Lowered his voice. You don't understand what you mean to me. I did smile then. A real one. Oh, I said, I understand you perfectly. I watched his breath hitch. I told him about the restraining order. Didn't accuse. Didn't yell. Just mentioned it. Casually. Like weather. The color drained from his face. You looked her up too? I continued. You have a type. His hands started shaking. He pressed them under the table. I would never hurt you, he whispered. You're different. That word again. Different. Special. Chosen. I stood. You're right, I said. I am different. I leaned in close enough that only he could hear. Because I'm not scared of you anymore. I walked out without waiting for a response. Behind me, a chair scraped. He didn't follow. That night, the messages came fast. Desperate. Apologetic. Angry. Then apologetic again. I didn't answer a single one. Because the meeting wasn't the trap. It was the confirmation. He knew now that I saw him as he really was, small, exposed, and terrified of losing control. And men like that? They don't stop. They escalate. Silence is a weapon when someone needs noise to survive. I gave him nothing. No replies. No blocks. No reactions. Just an open channel where every message he sent stacked up unanswered, proof of his unraveling. At first, he tried tenderness. I'm sorry if I scared you. I just care too much. Please talk to me. Then guilt. I haven't slept since we met. I thought we had a connection. You said you felt alone too. Then anger, thinly veiled, poorly disguised. You led me on. You don't get to judge me. You're not innocent either. That one made me laugh. Out loud. Alone in my kitchen. Because here's the thing they never understand. When you threaten someone's family, you don't get innocence anymore. You get consequences. I started archiving everything. Screenshots. Timestamps. Metadata. I made backups of backups. Cloud. Flash drive. Email drafts saved but never sent. Then I nudged him again. Just once. I'm scared again, I typed. You won't stop. The reply came instantly. I wouldn't have to if you just listened. There it was. I forwarded that message to myself, to my lawyer friend, to a burner email I'd already tied to a police report draft. I didn't submit it yet. I wanted more. So I pushed. I mentioned I'd been talking to someone else. That I felt safer now. That I might move. He snapped. The messages turned vicious. Possessive. Explicit. If I can't have you, no one will. I know where your sister parks. You think the police will save you? That last one? That was the match. I walked into the station the next morning with a folder so thick it thudded when I set it down. Different officer this time. Younger. Tired. But thorough. I didn't cry. Didn't exaggerate. I just handed him the story in chronological order, wrapped in evidence. For the first time, someone didn't tell me to be careful. They told me to wait. 3 days later, he messaged me again. Why haven't they come yet? I stared at the screen, my pulse finally calm. Because I knew something he didn't. They already had. His workplace had been contacted. His supervisor interviewed. His devices flagged. The restraining order from years ago? It hadn't expired in the ways that mattered. It painted a pattern. A judge signed an emergency order that afternoon. The knock on his door came at 6:12 p.m. I know because he texted me mid-sentence. There. Then nothing. No typing bubbles. No follow-ups. No more shadow. I sat on my bed and waited to feel relief. What I felt instead was satisfaction, cold, precise, earned. But this wasn't the end. There's a moment after a storm where the air feels wrong. Too clean. Too quiet. That's what the days after his arrest felt like. No footsteps behind me. No buzzing phone at 2 a.m. No weight pressing on my chest when I unlocked my door. People think that's the happy ending. It's not. The real ending, the real revenge, comes when the fantasy dies. I heard about him through channels I didn't even have to open myself. A mutual acquaintance messaged my sister, awkward and careful, asking if she was okay after everything. His coworkers whispered. His supervisor requested records. HR did what HR always does when liability shows its teeth. They fired him. Not immediately. They never do. They call it administrative leave first. Then termination following investigation. But the result was the same. No job. No access. No routine. Which meant no control. The court date came faster than I expected. Emergency orders have a way of speeding things up when there's a paper trail soaked in threats. I didn't look at him when I walked into the courtroom. I didn't need to. I could feel him staring. When the judge read the messages out loud, something extraordinary happened. They sounded stupid, petty, desperate, unhinged. All that poetry he thought made him deep? All those threats he thought were powerful? They shriveled under fluorescent lights and legal language. He tried to speak. Stumbled. Interrupted himself. Claimed he'd been misunderstood. Claimed I had encouraged him. The judge shut that down in one sentence. You are not on trial for your feelings, she said. You are here for your behavior. I finally looked at him then. He didn't look at me. He stared at the floor like it might swallow him. The restraining order was extended. Criminal charges followed, harassment, stalking, credible threats. His name entered databases that don't forget. And the best part? None of it required me to raise my voice. None of it required violence. I watched him lose everything he used to feel important without touching him at all. Afterward, outside the courthouse, he finally looked at me. His eyes weren't angry. They were empty. I never meant for this to happen, he said. I stepped closer. Just enough for him to hear me. You meant every step, I said. You just didn't think there'd be a price. I walked away while he stood there, surrounded by consequences. That night, I slept with my windows open for the first time in months. Revenge stories usually end with sirens or silence. Mine ended with something better. Normalcy. Weeks passed. Then months. The restraining order became background noise in my life, just another document in a folder I rarely opened anymore. My routines returned, but they were mine now. Chosen. Enjoyed. I cut my hair. Moved apartments. Took walks at night again. And him? He faded. That's the part no one warns stalkers about. When the obsession ends, so does the meaning. He had built his entire inner world around me, around control, fear, proximity. When that vanished, there was nothing underneath. I heard fragments through the city's quiet gossip network. He tried to appeal. Failed. Tried to explain himself online. Got shut down. Tried to date. Couldn't hide the record. Every background check reopened the wound. We've decided to go in a different direction, echoed the same truth. You are known now. He moved again. New neighborhood. New routines. Same shadow clinging to his heels, his own name. And here's the cruelest part, the one that makes this real revenge instead of just justice. I didn't have to do anything else. No taunts. No final messages. No victory speech. I became the thing he couldn't stand to be ignored by. Because while I was rebuilding, laughing, loving, living, he was stuck replaying the moment his fantasy shattered in a cafe full of strangers. Stuck remembering the look on my face when I realized he had no power. People ask me sometimes if I'm afraid he'll come back. I tell them the truth. No. Men like him don't return to places where they were exposed. They don't chase women who see them clearly. They don't revisit stories where they were reduced to evidence exhibits and legal warnings. He wanted to own me. Instead, he gets to live the rest of his life knowing this. He chose me as his target. And I chose to end him. Not with violence. Not with cruelty. But by dragging him into the light and leaving him there. Alone. TLDR. He stalked me. Threatened my family. Tried to make me small. Now I walk freely through a city that knows his name. And he spends his nights wishing I'd just stayed afraid.